welcome along to the Make It Count podcast. My name is David.
My name's Matt.
And we are the Taylor Bros.
We are the Taylor Bros. Coming at you with another episode of important things.
Coming at you, yes. Yeah.
We're coming at you aggressively today.
So,
don't waste your time.
We feel like some of our thinking is probably quite informed by Atomic Habits and James Clear.
Yes.
You must get his newsletter.
I get his newsletter.
Because you've put another quote in by James Clear.
Every now and again I like what he does, yeah.
And so
we can't just be the James Clear fanboy episodes though.
No,
so,
no,
you know,
yeah, so we have to
we'll hold
put
off.
other stuff in there as well. But this is an episode you really liked.
Yeah.
And a quote you
He
really
is
liked.
clear by name, clear by nature, to be fair.
So, I have learned that whenever I think I don't have enough time to do that, what I usually mean is I don't have enough energy or I'm not actually interested in doing this. And so you put it in as this paradigm of, are we managing our time or are we managing our energy?
Yes, I like that. It brings to mind...
Because it's your idea.
Well, it wasn't my original idea. It brings to mind, I remember hearing from someone, I think you shared it with me a long time ago, they were saying, you know, when God came to Solomon and said, you know, what is one thing that you want me to give you? And he said, wisdom. And this person was saying, the older I get, the more convinced I am that if God did the same to me, I would just say, more energy. I'm just always tired.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, it's true, isn't it? You know, unlimited energy. Maybe you have kids, maybe you're stretched very thin. Unlimited energy would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this ties in a little bit.
World.
Yeah, unlimited energy. That's what I suppose superhero films are about as well, isn't it?
Yes.
The ability to go beyond the normal, to transcend the limitations. But I think often we get into this place where we go, oh, I just don't manage my time well enough. Or, you know, there's so many things about this is how you can do your career and your life and your hobbies and just manage your calendar well enough. But then we get overwhelmed because actually we're trying to achieve something that really is unattainable. Mm-hmm. And perhaps this feeling of overwhelm is as much a sense of, I actually don't have the resources, the actual energy to fulfill all these things. It's not actually a matter of time. So that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
so because sometimes we've had other people say, oh, I don't have the time to do that. I don't feel like I have the time or the space to put that in. Or, you know, like you said, I feel overwhelmed. I have all these things to do and I don't have the time. And I was thinking recently, probably this year, the biggest crunch point, I actually didn't say I didn't have that time, but I knew I didn't feel like I had the time because I was studying, I was writing essays. I think I had 2 different assignments to do, as well as being in school 4 days a week, training, as well as some extra demands coming upon me ahead of a transition. And there was something extra that came in, and it just made me feel very overwhelmed. And I remember saying, I don't have the energy to do that extra thing.
Yes.
On top of all of the other things. Now I knew that, hey, I get home, I can still exercise, I can do these things. And actually, I probably do have 90 minutes a day extra time that I could pull from something else to put there. But I actually knew that I didn't really have the mental or emotional energy for that at that point in the day to give it to what was necessary to accomplish that task.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in that moment, I knew I didn't have the energy to do it.
Yeah.
And so I pushed back on that in a number of different ways.
Absolutely. I think part of this, when you're contrasting time against energy or time management against energy management, that especially comes up for you as in that sort of Enneagram space. You're one of your sort of, was it avarice is like the greediness of your own energy.
Yes.
And you're very aware of that. Whereas it goes back to when we were on the Logos Hope ship and we talked to one of our friends who was a massive introvert. And you said to him, how do you survive as an introvert on this place? You've got 300 people packed into what is effectively a pressure cooker. And he said, well, actually, I'm really good at it because I know what I need to do. It's the extroverts that are going to struggle because they'll burn out. They don't know that they need to withdraw in order to manage their energy.
They're not used to setting those boundaries for themselves. Yeah, so that was interesting. And I suppose you're aware, and I know I'm very aware of my energy. And yeah, sometimes we don't recognize that. And I thought, well, why why would we say I don't have time when really what it actually is I don't have energy? And I think that's a number of things. One of them is that how do you measure energy in this capacity?
Yeah.
Some ways, from a scientific point of view, energy is, what is it, kilojoules? Joules?
Yeah.
That's very measurable. But our experience of energy is not that.
No.
It's very influenceable by a number of things, by our sleep, by what we had at lunch, all of these things.
Well, also, it's more complex than that as well, because we're not a phone with a battery. We're not a car with a fuel tank.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually, just after I've eaten, sometimes I feel more tired because my body is having to work to break down that fuel.
Yes.
So it's not immediately. So again, I've just fueled up, but actually that I don't feel more energized.
Yeah, and again, because it depends on what you eat. You can have a more sugary thing and that will go through your very energy and then you hit the crash, or you have something like you said that maybe is a bit more slow release that takes a bit of energy, but it's more steady. It's less peak and trophy. And so when we're talking about energy, that might how maybe habitually we live our lives in terms of sleep and diet and exercise and emotionally and otherwise could be very variable from moment to moment, from day to day.
Yeah.
And so that if I don't have the energy, people are I need to just get on with it anyway. It doesn't matter that you don't feel like you have the energy for that.
For sure. A live example for this at the moment for me for the last few months, as you will be aware, I've been studying Spanish, right? And it's not just on my own time, self-directed. I signed up for a course. There is content to get through, homework and everything. And the rough time they say is, spend 1 to 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. So, roughly 5 to 10 hours a week. And there's the number of times, so it gets to the end of a work day and I'm like, well, I could spend an hour now. I have the time, but do I have the energy? Do I have the mental energy? And there have been times I go, no, I'm going to do it. I'm committed. I'm going to go for it. And there are other times like, no, I just don't have the energy today. I'm like, did I have time? Every time I had that time, but I didn't necessarily always have that same energy. So what do I need to do to manage that? And again, this is where sometimes some of those what come across as time management or maybe habit tips come through, the 10-minute rule or the 5-minute rule. Just push through for 5 minutes and get started. And really, I think the way I see that is that's the activation energy required. When I remember chemistry, the reactions, sometimes you have to put in enough energy to get it over this lip, and then it will self-sustain, and then it continues on itself. But that's the activation energy. I just need to push through, start moving, and actually then, once I'm in it, that inertia gets me, I have that, and I can then spend an hour, maybe even sometimes longer, and that's the flow thing. It's actually, the critical thing is, did I push through the energy barrier? And sometimes that's what's needed.
Yeah. So again, and it's some of it is just really an awareness of your energy, because you have to be aware of what energy you're bringing, and I think that's why when you've been in a place a long time, a workplace. Or a life stage, for example, the demands of a thing. Hey, that meeting that's an hour long, I can be really angry or frustrated about that, or I can just passively just sort of manage my energy so that when I leave that meeting, I know I've got that 90 minutes where I can really get on with it.
Sure.
Whereas when you're new to a place, everything takes more energy because you're trying to work out the contours of that space. It's like when you're starting a new habit, everything takes more energy because you're trying to work out what does this demand of me. So you're not just managing your energy in regards to the flow of the day. You're thinking, I need to work out how much energy each of these things demands of me. Which is why new things can feel more draining. And that's why I suppose it's like, you can be at a stage of your life where actually, if you were looking at it on an hour-by-hour breakdown of your day, you actually have loads of time, but you don't feel like you have the energy. And so, I think that energy awareness is really important, but it's really difficult because there are so many factors that affect it.
Hugely. And there are two thoughts that have just come to me. I remember one was this idea of that going back to a planner, or like, let's schedule everything. And there was an exercise that I think one guy was telling people that they teach them to go through, and people would always comment and say, oh, this doesn't work because like I've scheduled everything and how long I think it's going to be, a time boxing, like how long I think, not just like what I want to do, but when and how long, and it doesn't all fit. And they were like, that's the point. The point is to show you that you're trying to cram too much in too short a time. So the trick isn't actually really a time management thing there. Maybe it's a prioritizing thing. And then also experimenting with what activities fit best at what time of the day or the week, depending on those energy flows, if you have that freedom. But the other one was an idea from John Acuff, and he was talking about, we always think of like, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's the end of a thing, a goal or a new habit or something. So I've got a 30-day challenge, and we think, oh yeah, well, what's the beginning? Probably days 1 to 10, then days 10 to 20, then days 20 to 30. That's the beginning, middle. He said, no, the reality of the situation in terms of what it feels like is the beginning is day 1, then you've got days 2 to 29, and then you've got the end. And when do most people give up? It's in that middle, and actually it's probably day 2 or 3, because you've got a long stretch of now just do the thing. You know, you've lost that initial burst of motivation. And so when it comes to energy management, so much of it isn't go, I need this just huge burst of energy. I'm gonna get off the couch and suddenly start exercising every day. You're going to burn out because you don't actually know the drain that's going to give on your body. That's why someone who has a good habit of keeping fit, even if they're not necessarily pushing forwards into new ground, actually they know that maintenance exercise, they know what that's going to do. They know how they can turn up again tomorrow and the day after and the day after. And that, in the long run, in terms of making it count, will make a big difference.
Yeah. And I think there's a knowledge there. So as we wrap up, I mean, I used to exercise. I used to sometimes use exercise videos. I'd always watch the video before I did it, because I needed to know what's next, how much do I need to, how much can I push myself before I feel
makes a huge difference.
Exactly exhausted. So that's all from us this week at the Make It Count podcast. Join us next week.